Hey everyone, this is Jasmine. I'm a Reiki and Mental Alchemy practitioner. So, if you would like to know more about what I do, you can look for my details, which I'll leave it below. And also, my Instagram handle is at San Pluto Alchemist for my offering. So, let's jump into what I'm gonna talk about today. So basically, what I'm going to talk about today is psychoanalysis, or some of us would call it our conscious versus unconscious versus subconscious. So basically, what I'm talking about is one of the psychology modality called psychoanalysis. If I'm not wrong, it is coined or the theory is discovered by Sigmund Freud, and eventually I think he kind of like collaborate with Carl Jung to kind of like further the studies, further the theory on this. I am giving a really not a good summary of this, but if you are interested, just go search psychoanalysis, depth psychology, Sigmund Freud, or Carl Jung, and believe me, all of the information will come up. Personally, just a little bit about me. Personally, I'm not very good with memorizing history or like the dates or like the details of things. What I'm good at is knowing the concept, how it works, and then how I apply it to my daily life, which is what I want to share today. Okay, so just to share a little bit more how I get to know about this. So basically, there was a period of my life where I just have so much inner conflict. I just couldn't really, I just don't like my life basically. That's where I went down the rabbit hole of like searching and searching, mainly on the topic of spirituality. That's where I came across the very famous spiritual teacher Teal Swan, which she taught about a lot about shadow work, parts work, and she did have this modality where she coined the completion process. Yeah, if you're interested, you can look into it. But at that point of time, I did picked up a lot of the details or like how to apply psychoanalysis from Teal Swan. At that point of time, because she's a spiritual teacher, right? So at that point of time, I actually didn't know that it is actually under the umbrella of depth psychology or psychoanalysis. Um, yeah, so just a little bit about that is that that was where, after learning all of the theories from her and trying to observe myself and observe other people as well, that's where I it starts to make sense to me. Like I start to get like a lot of insights to why I couldn't just push myself to do certain things, or why like that person who is always angry all the time, and she actually told everybody that she's not an angry person at all. That got me like all confused up until I know and I understood how psychoanalysis works, and it all makes sense. And so I think it helped me on the first step of like understanding people, understanding myself. So to get a little bit further, it's more about how I learned how to apply the theory to myself, and how to make myself have a better life. Probably not describing this the right way, but how do I, apply certain modalities so that I can have a better life, I can have less internal conflict, and then more clarity and more alignment in choosing a certain path or making certain decisions. I think that's what worked for me. So I did apply it. I have the book, The Completion Process by Teal Swan. I have to say it was really got sent at that point of time. And if you are interested, just go get a book. It's actually not that expensive. It's just like less than 20 Singapore dollars. This is just how much a book is the usual price of how much a book costs. Then eventually it reaches another bottleneck, I would say, like how much it helped me to regulate, helped me to do inner work. Like there is only so much I can do for myself. Also at a point of time, I was severely burnt out from my previous job. And after quitting my job, I was, on a quest to heal myself, to bring myself back to health emotionally, physically, mentally. And that's where I start to search for the keyword somatic therapist. And that's how I, at a point of time, engage my somatic therapist. So she didn't just apply somatic therapy modality. She did study in depth into depth psychology as well, where she integrate both psychoanalysis, depth psychology, and somatic therapy together, and that really works wonder for me. As well as I would say that not all trauma we can heal ourselves by just us holding space for ourselves. Sometimes we do need support from other people, be it because they have better knowledge than us. I would actually feel like the first and foremost and the main thing is because sometimes we really just needed somebody else to support, somebody else to hold space for us, which is why I'm doing what I'm doing now, which is integrating both Reiki and mental alchemy together. Okay, so getting to the main point of my sharing, which is I want to take this chance to explain the concept of psychoanalysis and how it works, and eventually how it ties into a bigger picture of like how does it tie to like law of attraction, manifestation, and law of mirroring. Okay, so I always like to use this example. Imagine that there is a child who is born, or from a certain point of time, like he starts to grow up in a single parent family, and the parent had to, let's say it's a mother, and the mother, because she has to go work, she has to go make a living, she cannot always stay at home to take care of the child. And that's where the child has to be forced to grow up really, really fast, to be really mature, to be really independent, quicker than how most of the kids at that age supposed to be. I don't know, maybe let's just say 6 years old, 7 years old, and the usual childhood could be like going to the playground, go play around with friends. The mother has to kind of like, usually bring the kid to multiple places to have play dates, to play, to interact with other children. But because of this child, for example, growing up in a single family where the mother has to constantly not be at home because she has to, go work. And he basically has to cook for himself, do his own homework, and yeah, basically have to be independent at a very young age. And he knows not to throw a tantrum. He knows not to ask her mother for things that he really, really wants. Say it's a certain toy or wants to go to a theme park. Like he knows not to ask because they barely can make ends meet. And that I would say is mature, being very mature for his age. And because of that, right, so when he was a child, like before all of this started happening, or before he's been forced to be independent or mature, right? So say that everybody is like born as a whole, like a whole person. And because of the circumstances, he's being forced to be mature. Inside of him, he has to split. His personality has to split. And the one that is going to be attached to his ego, or the forefront of his personality, has to be independent, has to be mature. Yet the one that likes to be playful, likes to be childlike, has to fall into the unconscious, into the background, into his shadow. There are like so many multiple different terms of how people are calling it. But basically, the one that's on the forefront is in his conscious, is in his identity, is in his ego, so to say. And the one that's like fallen behind, which is the childlike self, the playful self, will be in his unconscious or his shadow. And up until a certain age, right, our personality will be formed that way. Like, even though we are born as a whole, due to all of the circumstances we bump into as a child, we experience as a child, and all of the lessons that we learn, the conditioning that we have been taught by our parents is gonna, make us, mold us, so to say, like mold us into a certain way. And I like there are people out there that says that our personality will be kind of, our character will be kind of set when we reach a certain age. I don't exactly believe that, but in this scenario, let's just say that our personality will be finalized in mowing, let's just say 8 years old. And then from 8 years old and onwards, right, this person will go around looking at life, looking at circumstances, always through this lens. And he's always having certain things, certain personality, like in this case, the independence and the maturity, attached to his ego, and he will go around behaving this way. And people will look at him like, oh, he's really mature, he's really independent. But at the same time, those personality of like childlike and playfulness doesn't exactly go away just like that. It will still exist within the person, but in the unconscious, in the shadow part of it. And that's where, there is always this tug of war between all parts of us. And say like, for example, this person, like most of the time will be very, very independent, very, very responsible. But there are cases like, or like when he's with certain people, you can see the other personality coming out, where he's like sometimes seems overly childish or overly playful, that kind of thing. But most of the time, not all of the time, the person will not even aware that he let out this personality, which is I would say it's probably a bit more unlikely in this case for the childlike. But I do have seen, not say unlikely, but probably because I have never seen before. But what I've seen before is, like I said, one of my ex-colleague actually always tell everybody that I'm not fierce, I'm not angry, I'm a very level-headed person. But she constantly flare her temper. She constantly is a very passive-aggressive person. But everybody can see that, and everybody's afraid of her. But she always said that she's not. It was so obvious to the extent like there were a few of us talking and say like, how can she not be aware? And after knowing the theory of psychoanalysis, that's when I realized that, oh my gosh, this is how it works. She's not even lying. She's truly not aware. Sorry, I sidetracked a little bit. Okay, so I feel like that explanation is pretty clear on the psychoanalysis and the concept of psychoanalysis and the psychology part of it. Now, moving on to law of attraction. You know how certain people, they'll always say like, just focus, just be, you are what you think, da da da. That's where it falls short, because all parts of us, including the parts that are in our shadow, the parts that are in our unconscious, this part has a part to play in your vibration as well. It contributes to your overall frequency, overall vibration. And no matter how much you want to like be disciplined, like apply pure will to manifest certain things, this is why like it doesn't work. And sometimes it does, like if you apply more focus or more will to it, it might. So I always like this analogy, and I feel like I hear this from Tilson before, where imagine all parts of you is on a boat. So you said that, so there will be like 3% rolling towards the right and 3% rolling towards the left. And you said like, hey, let's go this way. But when everybody start rolling, right, that's where you get you go in a circle. But at the same time, like then the next question will be, what do you do with it? Most people will be like, let's use pure will. Let's use like just be more resilient. Let's be more disciplined. That's where you like these people, these 3% that's like want to roll towards the right side, right? Will say, you know what, we just gotta roll harder. Like just let them be. We just gotta roll harder. But no, like there is a reason this other tree wants to roll towards the left. There is a reason why, and we need to dive into the psyche to understand why. And most of the time, all parts of us just want to do certain things for our own good. And we cannot just say like, nah, I don't want to understand you. I just want to go this way. I don't care about you. It doesn't work. You have to talk to them. You have to understand them. You have to communicate with them. And yeah, and I really believe, as in like I'm a lived example of how it works. As in like I've gone through therapy like this. I've done this all for myself, and yeah, it feels more easeful to get to really get to the destination that we actually want to go, rather than just pure greed and pure will. Um, I don't know if I digress, but I'm always so passionate when I talk about this. But the other part that I really want to talk about is um, law of attraction. It works like that, and the other part, which is not law of attraction but pure attraction, how it works is, for example, back to the original example of this boy who is now the grown up, who is independent, who is like mature, having his childlike and his playfulness in his shadow. Very high chance he will go about his life being attracted by people who are more childlike, who are more playful. It is because he has kind of like banished that part of him into his shadow. So let's just say this, in every characteristic, every personality, there is always a good side, pros and cons to it. And also, to be honest, we embrace or we allow certain parts of us to come out at different places with different people at different circumstances. And there is a reason why. Like I couldn't go to work and be playful all the time. And if I want to be playful, maybe I'll be with my husband, with my family, with my friends, for example. There are time and place for certain parts to come out. And that doesn't mean that we have to banish them completely. But the thing is, when we go through our childhood, right? Like, for example, in his case, he will always be focused on like, you know what, I cannot be a burden to my mother anymore. She's been working so hard. I need to be independent. Like, being childlike means being lazy, being not nice to my mother, being a burden to my mother, yada yada. Like, there's always this narrative in him. But at the same time, when he goes out in his usual life, when he will always be attracted to someone, not always, but usually being attracted to someone who is childlike and playful, because there is always light and dark. There is always pros and cons to certain character, and being playful is being easeful, is being just light, is being like allowing ourselves to just be yada yada, and he don't allow that. And being someone who is like that somewhat allow himself to feel like that, and which is why there is a very high chance you're gonna be attracted to someone which that part of you have already abandoned banished into the shadow, because it feels whole, it feels like an exhale. It just feels like pure love sometimes, because it feels whole. You abandoned this part, and externally you met someone who is so similar to that part of you. It's like accepting that part of you back into yourself. And this is the reason why some people say like, why am I always attracted to this certain kind of people? Like, for example, some people say, why am I always attracted to bad boys? Because bad boys take charge. Bad boys know what they want. Bad boys know when to set their boundary, and probably you don't know how. And which is why you're always attracted to this type of people with this type of personality. Because again, it's not all it's not all bad, it's not all good. There's always two angles to how you see it. So, but here's the thing. Yeah, so this very independent, very mature guy, maybe, just maybe, eventually ended up with someone who is really childlike, really playful. At the start of the relationship, it's just pure fun. It's so easeful, it's so smooth, that yada yada. It just flows. But then this usually doesn't last very long, because at the start of it feels like an exhale, right? It feels like I've embraced that. By embracing this person, it's like me embracing that part of me. And what you see is always the pure light, the pure goodness of it. But as times goes by, because life is always about ups and downs, right? That's where you start to observe this person, and that's where the shadow side, the not so good side of how you perceive it, starts to come up. Maybe that playful person is indeed more immature. Maybe the person doesn't cannot hold on to a job to earn enough to pay the bills. Maybe the person is not is always being so careless that they lock the door, something got lost, all this kind of thing, and then eventually it felt like a burden to you. Just an example, let's just say the person eventually feels like a burden to you, and it reminded of you like how you have to keep yourself all together when you are a child, to not be a burden to your mom. And you start to think to yourself like, my gosh, I work so hard to keep it all together, not to be a burden to my mom, and this girl is now laying all this onto me. And then you start to have all of these negative thoughts. You start to see all of the shadow side of it. You start to like, have problems. And the saddest part is, most likely you will start to want that person to change into a person who is similar like you. And you want that person to abandon the traits that you were actually so attracted to, so attracted by in the first place. And eventually it will always be a vicious cycle, because there are instances where you may be attracted to another independent, another mature person, but eventually you'll realize that there is no space for you to allow the childlike self, allow the playfulness in you to come up. And it's gonna be suffocating, because all parts of us has a role to play. All parts of us need space to come out, need circumstances to come out. And there is no way you can actually suffocate yourself for the rest of your life. I'm gonna share my example now, but a different example, because I do have the independent and childlike self thingy a little bit, not the most obvious trait of me, but the other, what I want to share is the more obvious trait of me, which is I'm a recovering people pleaser, where I always shapeshift. I always am very timid. I dare not speak up for myself. I dare not draw boundary. And if you watch my previous video, you probably have an idea about like the energy vampire and about me leaking energy, because I am very aware that I still have that trait. Like even energetically, I'm leaking. What does it say about me drawing actual boundary with people? So anyway, when I go out, right, I always have this fear about being in conflict with people, especially strangers, especially people where I'm not so close to. And I always keep to my lane when I see conflict, when I see like children running around, and if they would like I anticipate them bumping to me, I'll actually shift, because this is how much it aches me. Okay, so I also want to share something, because like we are talking about the conscious and the unconscious part of us, right? Where there is always a tug of war between different parts of us, and certain parts just want to come up. I used to have this tendency, I still do sometimes, where I'm always this very, very nice person. I'm all encompassing. I'm always holding space for people. But when you push me over the edge, that's where I flare my temper, and it's usually very big. It's uncontrollable, and most of the time I feel a lot of regret for it. And I I apologize. I do scare a number of my friends because of this, and I do have people in my life where like I had enough. I don't want like they don't want me in their life, and I totally understand that it's kind of a ticking bomb, right? Where one day she's okay, the other day she's flaring her temper. I don't even know where her boundary is. I totally understand. So anyway, so one day I was working with my somatic therapist about this, and we were working on this part of me about me having coming into more power about when and where to set my boundaries, and I specifically remember she said this to me. It doesn't always have to be yourself bending over backwards for other people, nor setting boundary looks like you flaring your temper at people. Like, it doesn't have to be like that. Sometimes it can be as easy as like, hey, you doing this makes me feel uncomfortable. Maybe you make me feel uncomfortable. It will be great if you don't do this to me anymore. And that kind of stuck in my head, and I feel like I've gone to different therapists before, counselors before that told me about this thing. So being repeatedly told this several times, that kind of stuck in my head. And so specifically after one somatic therapy session, I went out. I went nearby to buy a soya bean, and it was a very long queue. There was only one staff working, and it was a very hot day. And then there was this father and son, where the father starts to become very passive aggressive, and he's making all of these very nasty comments while queuing, trying to, it's like those passive aggressive, like my god, it's so long, why can't she just hurry up? But not like directly to her, just kind of like just keep raising his voice, hoping that she would go faster. And then eventually he sent the child, who also wanted a soya bean, to go to the counter and start disturbing the lady, to kind of like show, I don't know, both of their frustration, to just tip over whatever is at the counter, start touching the table. And at one point the father actually asked the son to go tell the staff that, you are so slow, why are you so slow? The situation was just simply so uncomfortable. The old me would have just gave up, stopped queuing, and just walk away, because I don't like to be in a very tense situation. Or if you tip me over the edge, I could just start screaming at a person. I don't know what I will scream. It just usually comes when I'm like very angry. I have no idea. Sometimes after that, I'll just regret it. But that day, after I was just, it was uncomfortable, but I was able to bear with the whole thing. And eventually, when it was my turn, right, I I remember I left my phone and my wallet at the counter because I was trying to dig for something else in my bag. And the little boy starts to take my wallet and take my phone. Of course, I was annoyed. And somehow, somewhere, I mastered this ability to say it very calmly, hey, would you please not touch my stuff? And then the father got pretty defensive, I would say, and he asked the boy, what did she say? What did she say to you? And the boy, not knowing what was going on, turned and looked at the father. And I turned, looking at the father. I said that I asked him if he could stop touching my stuff and give me some space. Oh yes, I did say give me some space, because he was like skin to skin right next to me. And the father obviously got more defensive because he doesn't like to be pushed back into his place, I would say. He actually yelled and said like, boy, stand far, far away from her. I don't know how much space she needs. So obviously I was shaking. I'm not used to being in a tense situation like this, but I managed to get my soya bean and I left. Of course, I didn't feel too happy inside given what just happened. The next session, I went back to my somatic therapist where I told her the whole situation, where she broke into a smile. And she said this. She said that, you know, how do you usually work, and how this time around, how your inner psyche, your inner world worked. In the past, right? Your you know, the very timid self always come up to the forefront, and it's more of like a let's escape from the situation, let's just hide, basically conflict avoidance. Or when you feel like you couldn't hold it in anymore, your shadow side, that protector side of you, will just gush out and just stand right in front, which come into the forefront, into my psyche, hiding my timid self, and say like, hey, let me take charge, where he usually goes like boom, and he just bursts out, and you know, I don't know, scold everybody, and just you know, the bomb just went off. This time around, what happened was, my timid self was holding hand with my protector self, and both were at the forefront, and we managed to find an equilibrium about how to deal with the situation, which is clearly and softly state our boundary, nothing more and nothing less. That, I feel like that was the moment when I realized that this is all possible. Like I've read this, I've learned this in theory for so long, don't really know exactly how it works, but this time around it was like a really lived experience for me, and it's kind of like a confirmation that it works. It really does work. All of the work, all of the money that I've put in, all of the tears I have shed, it works, and it's not. So I'm gonna share up until here for now. I feel really compelled and really passionate to share this, because I feel like this is the core of my offering, mental alchemy especially. This is also the core of the foundation of my learning, for so many, like it branched into so many other subjects like spirituality, manifestation, law of attraction, yeah, everything else. Yeah, so I'm gonna like stop sharing now. But know that everything else that I'm gonna share going forward is gonna be somewhat built on this foundation. Thank you for watching. This is probably also a pretty long one. I love you guys, and see you guys next time.